All right, now let's pivot to some policing issues, and we will start in Baltimore. That is where Officer Edward NERO was just acquitted on 4 charges in the Freddie Gray case. NERO, he was one of the arresting officers. The judge said NERO acted reasonably when he didn't put a seatbelt on Gray in the police van. He said that the officer could have reasonably assumed that superior officers on the scene would have secured Gray accordingly. Gray, of course, he suffered a fatal spinal injury while in police custody. Now, the first trial of Officer William Porcher, it ended in a hung jury that back in December. 1 acquittal, 1 hung jury down, 5 more trials to go. And joining us now is retired NYPD Lieutenant Darrin Porcher. And Darrin, is it safe to say that the cases in Baltimore are going from the hardest to prove from the prosecutor's standpoint to the ones where they most likely could get a conviction? Because
I mean, it's difficult to say. When we look at the first case, it ended in a hung jury. With the second case, it was an acquittal. But it was interesting to me because when I look at the charges that the prosecutor introduced in this case, it was clearly something, without me even being in this courtroom, that I knew that there was going to be an acquittal on. One, the first thing, Officer NERO in connection with the false arrest. Officer NERO was not the arresting officer. Secondly, when you take in consideration strapping, or I should say positioning Freddie Gray in the transport vehicle, Lieutenant Rice, who was the supervisor on the scene, he was in the transport vehicle. He was the person that secured Freddie Gray in that transport vehicle. NERO simply, all he did was he assisted in transporting Freddie Gray on a street level to the vehicle. But ultimately, it's the vehicle operator that's tasked with
that's NERO that we're looking at right now in the yellow that's walking there. Does a lot of this go to the prosecutor? I mean, in that she went out public, told everybody what was going to happen, you know, that we were going to get justice and everything else. Did she overpromise here and so far underdeliver?
Absolutely. When we look at the first 2 cases, the results are what they were. You know what's something that stands out? Even Freddie Gray's family's attorney agreed with the ruling in his case. He said, look, the judge did everything by the numbers, and he was happy with it. I just think that the prosecutor, as opposed to falling into public opinion and saying, look, I'm going to vigorously go after these cops, should have taken a step back and analyzed it from a realistic perspective. One of the cases, just the false arrest, for example. Generally speaking, when we think in terms of a false arrest, the worst case scenario is the exclusion of evidence, the defendant being released, set free, or the extreme case is a civil suit against the officer, not an arrest. An arrest and conviction for an unlawful arrest, it really begs the question of how effective was the prosecutor here, and it clearly states that they were reacting to public outcry in connection with the riots.
And we said at the time, Dom, like when she went out and did that press conference, that prosecutor, it's
bad
like
mistake.
You knew that either she must have known a lot more than the rest of us did, but you know, there weren't cameras inside that van and everything else. It's a tragedy what happened to Freddie Gray, but she was going to have a tough case to prove, and so far it's not looking good for
Richard, any first-year journalist could tell you, and the police commissioner said this, Bill Bratton today, said this prosecutor was in way over her head. She overcharged the case from day one. From day one, she was never going to get these convictions. She came into office on a platform of, I'm from the community, I'm from the hood, I'm with you. Her husband is an elected official.
And it's blowing up in her face.
And it's blowing up. Her career is over. Her career is over. It's a done deal. It's
well,
over.
there still are 5 more trials to go
She
here.
might get 1 conviction, but it's over.
But the worst case scenario, what we have here is an officer's failure to seatbelt someone. And 3 days prior to this incident,
allegedly more, that they were trying to teach them a lesson with the ride they took them on.
3 days prior to this incident, a department directive came out to where arrestees must be seatbelted into transport vehicles. Officer NERO, everyone else, I should say the supervisors working that particular district have no record of Officer NERO or any of those members signing off to state that they did receive this training.
All right, I want to get to this next issue, and if people have seen this video, they know where I'm going. This case of police involved in a death, this one in Georgia, and it's raising a lot of questions about tactics and responses. Now, the mother of a 32-year-old man, she called the police for help when the man began acting violently after taking synthetic marijuana a few days earlier. When police responded, The man grabbed at their taser and he broke a pair of handcuffs and in no way cooperated with the police. No one's debating that. But in trying to subdue the man, police officers tased him at least a dozen times, including after he said, and it's caught on video, "I quit." The man, he died on the scene as his mother watched.
Stop fighting! Stop fighting! Hey, stop fighting! Hey, get us! Hey, get us some damn help up here! Our radio can't get out! Stop resisting! Okay. No, dude! Stop resisting! Relax! Just relax! Stop resisting! He's good now. All the weight in the world on him, man.
You know, Scott, I remember when tasers began to be more commonplace in police departments, and the thought was, hey, this is, if not a panacea, we'll hopefully cut down on shootings, and this will be able to subdue and nothing else. But the applications of this, when it should be used, how many times it should be used, when you stop, when you don't, I gotta imagine, as a county executive, you know, you kind of hold your breath here because you don't know the heart conditions of the person that you're using it on, et cetera, et cetera. It's easy to sit in the studio and say what you should or shouldn't have done here, but I'm shocked it doesn't happen more often.
Yeah, I mean, it really raises the question, how much is too much when it comes to these? I mean, they do stun people, and the police know it works in many cases. But this guy's on drugs. I mean, he's not of proper mind. There's got to be some other way to diffuse the situation, I would think. And I would guess that everywhere law enforcement will be watching this particular case to determine how much you use these tasers. And in what conditions. I mean, they certainly have saved lives, but obviously in this case, it hasn't. And quite frankly, Georgia police, I'm not sure about them anyway. But having said that, you know, the man obviously was still fighting them for a period of time there.
Is there a hard rule?
Well, I will tell you this much. I worked as a lieutenant in the Internal Affairs Bureau for a number of years, and I've seen many of these types of instances come before me. And one thing that's consistent as I look at this video is the officers are consistently saying to the individual, stop resisting. We don't know, the taser goes on two modes. There's the one, this was on stun mode, whereas that's when the prong is placed up against an individual and there's a jolt of electricity that goes into the subject. As I look at this video, I consistently hear the same claim, stop resisting. I did hear the individual state that I give up. However, I still hear the officer follow with a command of stop resisting. And when we look at the clarity of this video, I want to say body cams, they're one cog. They're not absolute.
I hear you, but I'll give you an unrelated case. There was a DWI stop that we covered years ago, and we weren't there for this reason. We're just a DWI stop. A guy obviously was inebriated, got put in the back of the squad car, cuffed. Starts kicking at the window. Cop goes in there and tases him multiple times, one time after another because he didn't like him kicking. The point is, they're not listening. They're not following directives. I'm not debating that.
Right.
But the guy's high. You know he's high and he's messed up. He's not of sound mind. You don't have to be Kreskin to say there's going to be a health consequence if you tase him 12 times.
Richard, I could say I'm not familiar with that case that you're referring to.
I'm saying what we just saw
what
here.
I see here, once again, we have a person that is the mother called. I want to say that this is a domestic dispute because this is a mother-son. This is someone that is not under control. How do we control this individual and transport them to the proper facility that can provide them the adequate medical care or incarceration if necessary? We don't know as police. We don't know what someone's medical background is. The goal is to transport this person as safely as possible to the proper facility.
No, but the guy died. I mean, this is law enforcement going overboard. There's no question about that. What would you have done, for example, or recommend if you had no tasers? How would you deal with this guy?
Well, when we think in terms of non-lethal weapons, we have mace. There's a series of different weapons that officers have. It could be a baton. This was a situation that went bad. I'm not telling you if this was the right way or this was the wrong way. My explanation is, based on the video that I saw, we clearly see that this is an individual that is resisting. He does once again mention that, look, stop. It's not, excuse me, not stop, but okay, I give up.
Well, it's kind of
However,
like what we saw
I do
in
hear it
Staten Island,
repeated
right?
over and over
It's kind
again.
of in a different way like what we saw in Staten Island, which was he wasn't a threat to the greater community at a certain point. Now, it's easy
Well,
for
how
me.
do
I'm
you-
sitting here in a studio. I get that, okay?
How do you restrain this individual and take them to the next phase?
We got
And
him on
that
the
is
ground.
And that's the
But
court.
not only that, I don't know what the law is in Georgia. Most police departments have guidelines for use of stun guns that state, for example, you should only use it twice in a 30-minute time period. So clearly they went over.
You'll never see something that states that you a number of times that you can use.
You're
Right?
the expert.
I've never
You're the
seen.
expert. But let me just give you the flip side to stop resisting or stop. Sometimes cops do that when they're brutalizing somebody and they're setting up a defense for themselves. So that's the other side. Sometimes a person is not resisting when they'll say stop
That guy
resisting.
clearly looks like he was, though, in that
I don't
particular
know about
case.
when he said I give up, it looked like he had stopped to me. When he said I quit.
And you got to also take in consideration the angle that we view this. Now, I've seen this on the other side of the table. I've seen this whereas these officers come in for administrative proceedings. I see it when this goes into a criminal trial. And based on what I see in this video, it's very difficult for us to say if it was excessive or not. Because we still hear the same claims. Stop resisting, stop resisting, stop resisting. Yes.
This guy was clearly not in his right mind. He was on drugs. But what if
All right,
what if he spoke a different language and he didn't understand the commands? Because I don't think he was able to process the commands if he was that high. And
That can be a possibility.
It
So what we're
happened, remember,
looking
in
at,
Alabama.
so what we see here is a training issue. The how could this person, this officer, had better handle
No,
the
but
situation?
can I ask you this really quick?
Yes.
Because to me, this is as simple as there's a difference between not obeying, right, and he wasn't obeying,
Right.
versus posing a significant threat.
Did I
So
see
my
a
question
Did I
was-
see a threat? No. It's clear to me that I did not see a threat to anyone there. However, it gets back to the point that I mentioned earlier. How do we transport this individual to the proper facility? Is it safe to
No,
say
but what I'm
verbal
asking you is,
commands wouldn't have
Darren, what I'm
worked?
just asking you is this. If a person isn't listening and they're not doing what they're told to do, okay, and the cops are the authority, okay, cop says, stand down, don't move, and the guy's still moving, is that enough rationale that you keep lighting him up until he finally obeys, even if he's not a threat to you, the officers, or anyone else? That's what it comes down to. Clearly, the guy's not of sound mind.
Right. Under normal circumstances, I feel as a supervisor, the best way to deal with these
Would
types
you
of
have told
situations.
the guys enough?
We have
I got to
in
hit
New
a
York
break.
City.
Would you have told them enough?
I would have told them enough.
All right.
But isolating
be right
containment
back,
is the best
everybody.
strategy.
We'll be right back.